My name is Beth Miller. I'm from Bath, New York, and I'm with a group called Citizens for Healthy Communities, but we're just really working ad hoc. We're not really a group.
Okay.
I mean, we're just grassroots. Do it.
Nice.
Yeah, stop the cuttings coming to our landfill in Steuben County. They want to bring the cuttings from the radioactive drill cuttings from Pennsylvania to Steuben County to our public landfill.
Where is the public landfill in Steuben County?
It's in Bath, New York.
No, they're already bringing one. There's
In Chemung, in Elmira, yeah. Now the DEC has stopped the process. Well, they haven't stopped bringing cuttings, but they are now revisiting the whole process of receiving cuttings. They're requiring more monitoring and a lot more to it because they're not as benign as they thought they were.
Does that make you happy that they're monitoring things now?
Yeah, but you just don't know if it's really ever adequate because the shale is radioactive, but it's more radioactive in some parts and not as much in others. And so, if you take certain samples and test them, they may not test so radioactive. But you don't know what you're getting unless you test everything.
So there has to be testing, and so maybe the testing is a good thing, but that might encourage it to be going on too.
Right, and also the monitoring. For example, our Public Works Commissioner wants to install some testing that doesn't actually test the right kind of radioactivity. It's alpha, beta, or gamma. We'll test the gamma and then we'll be able to figure out the alpha, but none of us are experts in radioactivity. It's a very slippery subject, and the only study that we have to go on at the moment was one commissioned by Casella, and so.
Who's Casella?
Casella is a waste management company that owns the dump in Chemung. So to serve its own interests, it's easy to make it look that it's not radioactive. But this isn't why you asked me, actually.
So you're talking about the cuttings and all that stuff. So what's interesting is tonight there's a DEC thing going on about the LPG, and people are talking to me about fracking. People are talking about this is kind of a fracking related thing you're talking about.
Completely.
So this isn't just a single thing going on. There seems like that there's a.
It's all connected, but it's interesting that the industry has taken a very fractured approach to it. So first they sort of came in and talked to the landowners and, each individually, and we're not getting the full story. As a collective, we haven't been able to, consider the issue in terms of the common good, but, they sort of splintered out and fractured out among the population to get them to sign before we were even really presented with the facts or what's happened in other places. And so right, they're building pipelines, they're building storage facilities, they want to bring cuttings up from Pennsylvania. It's just this industrial wave that is creeping into all the small little crevices of New York State that will wake up. It's like the frog in the boiling water. It gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and then it just dies. Whereas if it had jumped into boiling water, it would have jumped out. But when it's just one drip at a time, what it really feels like we're going to toast our economy and our health and our children.
What's the reason for doing this if it's not for the economy?
New York State's biggest industries are agriculture and tourism. So if we industrialize the landscape, there's no denying that would happen. Then we lose our tourism, just the truck traffic alone, but not let alone the rigs and the deforestation and the erosion and the lights and the compressors, and so I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
It's just a massive change from.
It's an industrial assault on our air, earth, water, and health. it's an assault. I mean, it really, truly, when you look at all of the pieces, we are being invaded, and we went to the meeting with Congressman Reed today at the library in Corning, and they had a DEC representative, and they had a representative of the oil industry and the gas industry, and the two congressmen. And every time we would ask a question, it was just like, they just said, well, we'll just follow all the rules, and the DEC will have someone there all the time, even though the DEC has like this many staff, figuratively, and they just keep cutting, and they want to drill 70,000 wells in southern tier of New York. The DEC is going to have enough people to witness every cement casing and every step of the process, and it's just like, it's impossible. It's impossible. It's this bureaucratic hope. When we have a governmental agency that has this dual, purpose, and its purpose is to protect the environment and to facilitate the harvesting of natural resources. And it's
like cognitive dissonance.
It's completely, it's like I'm here to protect your children, and I have spikes all over my clothing, and I'm feeding them poison or something.
I want you to love your mother, and I want you to kill her.
I know. But it really is an assault. So when for example, jobs. We've befriended someone who worked on rig in Pennsylvania. He's in his late 20s, and he has colon cancer. And 3 out of the 4 men who worked on his rig have cancer. That's 75%. Are these the kind of jobs that we want? No. There's 1,000 documented cases of water poisoning on the surface and underneath. Is that what we want? Do we want to wait and get cancer, or do we want to say no before it enters in?
Let's remediate the cancer once we get it. Wait a minute.
And you can't remediate the groundwater. You can't. So if we can't drink the water, and then we can't grow food, and then our property values, just hit the bottom. So go ahead.
So connect this with democracy. Do we have a right to defend ourselves against an industrial assault? Or
absolutely, and I also think in Albany how they want to protect New York City's watershed and Syracuse's watershed because it doesn't have the same filtration. I think it's a human rights issue, honestly, because it's like we can be subjected to potential poison, and it's not potential, it's actual poison. Trillions of gallons of water taken out of the water cycle and poisoned and never being able to be used again. What kind of impact is that going to have on the ecosystem? Trillions of gallons, this industrial masses of assault. And they're going to come, and then they're going to be gone. And we're just going to be left with the cleanup. And how much is that going to cost? And will it ever be cleaned up? And people aren't even saying that the Finger Lakes are the gateway to the Great Lakes. It's the Great Lakes watershed. So we have, the world's already fighting over fresh water. We have the largest freshwater resource in the world, and we're about to poison it.
It's horrific.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrific. And because I think as a consumer society, we feel like we can replace everything, and we really don't understand how much our lives depend on clean water and clean air.
We're going to cut 10,000 acres of forest, but don't worry, we're going to replant half of it.
Right, and they say Sandra Steingraber from Ithaca College was out in Utah and Wyoming. Formerly pristine area, it now has more smog than downtown Los Angeles because of the fracking, because of the truck traffic. So, and also, even though they've got long straight roads, there's horrific accidents that happen just because of all these trucks on the road. So all that we appreciate about our lifestyle in the southern tier, it's quiet, it's pastoral, it's goodbye.
So here's my question. Despite the horrors of the scale of this onslaught,
it's all about the scale, yes.
If you have the conscience and you got your eyes open and you can see it all, despite all that, is there anything that gives you hope?
Yes. New York State was a seat of the abolition movement. Senator Steingraber from Ithaca College said slavery was, morally completely devoid, right? But it was very profitable and it was very convenient for a lot of people, but it had to stop. And it was uncomfortable for people to give up their slaves and give up all this whole, it was an industry, you know what I mean? And it looked like, it gave us a lot of benefits, but we just had to stop it. So, but it was from upstate New York came the movement to stop slavery and also to bring rights to women. And so here we are in this seed of grassroots democracy and social change. And for example, Martin Luther King Jr. and his memorial that's just opened in Washington D.C. He's like, the arc of justice is very long, and even if the right are temporarily defeated, it's only temporary because it always bends to justice. But we have to keep paying attention, and we have to stay with it to keep moving it forward. And not angry against people. We need to bring them together and just weaken them to water and air and land and if we simply cut our consumption by half of our electric consumption by half, we can transfer to renewable sources. And guess what? In Europe, they use half the energy that we use, and they seem to be doing fine.
We get along okay.
Right. So
it's possible.
Yeah, it's completely possible, and it's our grand opportunity. It's our grand opportunity to unite, and we can, and we are.
Thank you. Beautiful. Okay. Thank you, Beth.